driving down the road, Garland Road to be exact, and this feeling welled up inside of me. So I made a note of it, and I went on my way. And a couple of days later, the same thing happened. Driving down the road, and this feeling just moved in me again. I didn't do anything about it, and then it happened again. And I noticed something. It was only happening when I passed by churches. Not every church, but those beautiful big churches with those large, sprawling parking lots. And as I saw all of those parking spaces, I felt envy. I was experiencing parking lot envy. Now, if you know Unity on Greenville, we are landlocked on the corner of McComas and Greenville. It is by the grace of the restaurants nearby that we are allowed to use the parking lot across the street. And we're grateful for the grace of Pizzeria Testa to allow us to do that. We're always grateful for that. Now, I know that it's a non-issue. It doesn't matter if we walk across the street or down the street. We all get here. With over 100 people in our sanctuary, we still have all been able to park. And yet, I felt the envy of these churches who have these huge parking lots. Why would I ever feel envious of another church and what they have? And yet, I did. Now, the authors of the book we're studying, the Book of Joy, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, have a few things to say about envy. They say that it starts from a very human act. It's an act of comparison. When we begin to compare ourselves to each other, envy can come. It comes from how we relate to our world. When we look and imagine that people are above us, we feel envious. When we look at the people who we see on par with us, our equals, we feel competitive. And when we look at people who are far less fortunate than us, we often feel contempt. There was truth in that. I looked at these churches and their big parking lots, and I thought that they might be better than us. So I felt a little bit of envy. The truth is, there is never a shortage of parking. We can park on every street around us. Yet it was my perception that created that. Yes, it's convenient to have it across the street rather than in the next block. And I had to ask myself, why am I feeling such envy over such a silly thing? Because this envy truly blocked my feelings of joy. That's what happens when we feel envious. We can't feel our joy. Now, the Archbishop and the Dalai Lama have different perspectives on how we navigate this feeling of envy. The Archbishop says that we can just accept the fact that we have this feeling and offer ourselves forgiveness. Self-forgiveness. And when we're in that mode of forgiving and releasing, we can gently move to gratitude. To be grateful for what we did have. And when we direct our focus to gratitude for what we have, we minimize that feeling of envy. This is very true. When I look at this building that sits on the corner of Greenville and Macoma since the 1920s, I see a beautiful historical landmark. Everyone refers to the yellow church on the corner when they're giving directions to others. You want to go here or there? Yes, it's near the yellow church at the corner. We hear that all the time. And here we sit. When I walk through this space during the week, I savor the energy that's been poured into this beautiful space since been spoken for all of these years over and over again. The joyous celebrations of marriages and births and life that's happened in this space. I feel all of that. I feel the honoring of the lives that have come and that have gone from this space. See the beauty of it. For this is truly a very sacred space to occupy. Now, a parking lot is nice. Indeed, it is. It was very comfortable to just park and walk across the street today. And this space is amazing. And I wouldn't trade that for any number of parking spaces right around it. Come and sit in this space during the week when it's quiet. Feel what I get to feel when I'm here, the only person here. Come and feel it, because your soul is always welcome here. We might have envy of some things, but we can move past that with gratitude. And the gratitude for all that this space offers to me, to all of you who gather, and to our world is insurmountable. And with the mindfulness, the Dalai Lama says, with mindfulness we can learn to be perceptive of when envy begins to move in. And then we can very gently, very lovingly shift our thoughts to gratitude. Because gratitude says to the world, yes, I want more of this, please. So am I going to place my gratitude on a parking space, or am I going to place my gratitude on this space? And the joyousness of this space. The community that has come to gather here for all of these years. The love that has moved through this space. The support and honoring of lives in this space. I think I'm going to give my gratitude there. Now the Dalai Lama also said that, to approach this feeling of envy, it's really important for us to stop it in the very beginning. To diminish energy that we give to a feeling or thought of envy, and to pour our energy and thinking into those emotions that bring us joyousness, that bring us happiness, that fill our life to overflowing. Those things that give us peace of mind, that we can control and be in charge of the flow of thoughts that come through our mind. And he continues to mention these 4 immeasurables that are part of the Buddhist teachings, and they are loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, and appreciative joy. This appreciative joy is a wonderful concept because it calls us to be happy for another person's good fortune. When someone experiences success, we say, oh yes, good for them. Just like me, they want to be successful. Just like me, they want to be happy. And just like me, they want to take care of their families. This is the foundation of our compassion exercise. Just like me, all people want to be happy. This stirs our compassion. This stirs our loving kindness. And it moves us to that part of the meditation that we just experienced, may all beings be happy. And when we're in that mindset of somebody else's happiness and joy and comfort and ease and peace, we're not envious. There's nothing better than to share our successes, to share our celebrations, all the happiness that happens in our lives. There's nothing better than to share it with another person and have them celebrate with us. For them to be joyful for us while we are being joyful for them. And with that, the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop move into a time of deep meditation. And it is this practice of mindfulness and meditation that allows us to shift our perspective. It allows us to know what's rolling in our mind, because those thoughts can come and go, 60 to 80,000 of them a day, and negative thoughts can land before you even know it. So this practice of mindfulness and meditation allows us to shift our perception. And here's what happens in meditation. Between every experience and every response, there is a space of time. So we get to use that space and that time. And when we have a devoted, ongoing meditation practice, that space between the event and our response to it expands. And in that expanded time, we can choose. When that person at the red light doesn't move as quickly as you might think they should, that's the experience. Now you can choose what your response to that is. Is it just to sit patiently and take a breath and allow them to register that the light has turned red or it has turned green and go? We can do that. We can enjoy that breath. But yesterday I heard something very different at a red light that had turned green. I heard a resounding, loud, quite obnoxious honking of the horn. That too is a choice. But what uplifts our world? What sends that happiness, joy, and harmony to our world? That meditation that we just did for our world. It's that pause to wait. And what if pausing and waiting saves you a hardship down the road? We don't know that. So we get to use that expanded time from what we gain in our practice of meditation. Meditation opens the way for us to live mindfully, to know what's going on in our mind, to be aware when we've moved from loving kindness to judgmentalness. And we have many opportunities to live in that space of judgmentalness. And we have many opportunities to move with loving kindness, compassion, and caring. It's by being mindful that we move into that inner realm of our being. It gives us an opportunity to heal our lifelong hurts and injuries. It gives us an opportunity to journey through any grief or sadness. It's an intimate and personal journey. And it's by far the most profound and rewarding journey that you will ever take, that journey within. Because as you go in, you meet yourself. You meet that beautifully, wondrously created, divine being that's inside of you. It might be that person that's honked the horn just moments ago, but that divine, beautiful person is inside. You get to move inside and you get to remember who you truly are. When that day of creation, that God declared human good. Going within, you get to remember that. Going within, you get to remember that you are deserving of all the good that this world has to offer. That you are deserving of love. That you are deserving of the joy that moves in the world. Especially love and joy. We are all deserving of that. And this is what the Dalai Lama wants us to consider in this. You know, you can't find joy by just willing yourself to be joyful. You can't clench your fist and grit your teeth and just create that joy. Joy is a byproduct of how we live in our world. If we show up in our world with peace, if we show up with compassion, That's what's going to come back to us. It's a spiritual law of circulation. So whatever we put out. So if you're not happy with what the world is giving you today, change what you're giving the world. Give the world a little love. Give the world a little compassion. Turn off that social media stuff. There's not a whole lot of compassion rolling around in there. Turn it off. Turn off the news for a while. Allow yourself to be with yourself, meet yourself again. We're emerging from the pandemic in ways that are bringing people back out into the world, and there's opportunities for conflict. They're not wearing a mask, they're wearing a mask. Are they afraid? All those questions that come up over this piece of fabric. And we can be compassionate one towards another. We can be kind and gracious. It's all about our perspective. It's all about where we sit and how we see the world and our relationship to that which we call God. There's many names for that essence and energy that moves in the universe. If you don't like the word God, it might be universal love, it might be great spirit, it might be spirit. Whatever you call that, that moves in you and guides you through your days and your moments and your weeks. Now this gentleman named Benjamin Corey wrote a book called Unafraid, Moving Beyond Fear-Based Religion, and how we see this beingness, this energy of God is typically how we move in the world. So if we see this God that we are to be afraid of because we might be condemned to hell and damnation for all of eternity, that's how we're going to move in life. And if we see God as a loving energy and essence, that's how we're going to move through life. I don't know about you, but my God is love. My God's name is love. And that's how I see it. That's my perspective. And life is different for everybody based on our perspective, based on our point of view. Now, I have two sisters. One is older, one is younger. That makes me a middle child, and I have all the scars to show it. All of them, yes. We grew up in the same house. We grew up in the same town. Mom and Dad were married forever. We had the same parents, and yet the three of us couldn't have more different perspectives of life, and even the life in the context of that family were very different, depending on so many things. Life looks differently depending on where you stand. When I stand here, I see you. I see you very clearly. Now, when I stand here, I can still see you, but I can't quite see the twinkle in your eyes. And the energy here feels very different. It feels distant over there. Now, for you on Facebook Live, I have a perception of you. I don't know, but I would imagine on this rainy day that you might all be in your pajamas still. You might be sipping tea or coffee, and I'm guessing that there's a few who are petting their cats and their dogs right now. But that's my perception. What is really happening in your homes? I have no idea. But boy, I made up a nice story, didn't I? And that's what our perception is. It's what we conjure in our mind based on a lot of things. Our experience, where we stand, how we choose to look at things. And there are many ways to look at an experience as there are people. Have you ever called tech support? And every person will give you a different answer. Ever called a government entity? You get different answers. And it's just based on perspective. But we can change our perspective and be that loving presence. And the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu agree that it's growing a wider perspective of life, expanding it from I to we, from me to us, from mine to ours. Those pronouns change the perspective of all of life. When we broaden that circle from here to here, we gently guide our thinking. We gently guide ourselves to open to others. And we can also lift that view from what we see moving between humans and the strife and struggle that we might see in the human world. And we can lift our perspective to what these gentlemen, these spiritual leaders, call the God's eye perspective. We can lift it from this human experience, which is where we live, and yet we know there's something greater, so that we can begin to see life, that we can begin to see each other as we truly are. We can look at another, and when we look at another, remember that we will never be looking into the eyes or to the face of anyone who is not beloved of God. So all those ridiculous markers that we use to separate and divide us, the shade of our skin, our gender, how we identify ourselves, how we live, what faith we practice, we use all of those things to divide and separate. But when we lift our perspective to the God's eyes perspective, none of that matters. We're just looking into the soul of a beautiful being created in the image and likeness of the divine. Perfect. Perfect in that God's eye perspective. It is that perspective that allows us to move into loving kindness, compassion, and grace, that equanimity, and that appreciative joy. Now, the beautiful thing about this book that we've been studying for several weeks is the largest chapter in the entire book is joy practices. Because joy is a practice. It's a practice of mindfulness, knowing when I'm, being hateful, knowing when I'm being snarky, knowing when I'm being judgmental. It's a practice. And shifting. It's all a practice, just as our prayer is a practice, just as our meditation is a practice. And the largest chapter of the book is joy practices. So this is your invitation for this week. The practice of setting a daily intention every morning. The practice is this. Sit very comfortably. You can sit in your bed or your chair, whatever. If you can sit in the lotus position, good for you. Do that. If not, however you feel comfortable. And breathe deeply. Breathe deeply in and out for several breaths. And then ask yourself, what is my heart's desire? What is it that I want for myself? What is it that I want for those I love, my family, friends? What is it that I want for my world? And when you settle on an answer for those, set an intention for the day. It might simply be to greet eye to eye every person you encounter. It might be to make note of when you feel judgmental and let it go. It might be to reach out to someone who you haven't talked to in a year's time. Whatever your intention for that day is, hold it in your heart, embed it in your mind. Sit with that. And conclude with the Tibetan prayer of 4 immeasurables. May all beings attain happiness. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings never be separated from joy.